Welcome to Indian Tech Icon Spotlight, where vision meets execution. I'm your host, Sheetalohal Acharya, and let's welcome our guest today, Mr. Nav Dhunay, whose journey from startups to senior leadership is a masterclass in resilience, reinvention, and results. Hi, Nav. Welcome to our show, and it's truly a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, thank you, Sheetal. It's a pleasure to be here.
Awesome. So let's begin our, discussion now. Every great career has a beginning. So we would like to know about yours.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I think that my career, in terms of probably started off not too dissimilar to other careers. I graduated from university and took on a job. My first job was a small electronics company at the time known as Motorola. And back then Motorola worked on military radios and communication, two-way communication. And I joined them, and that was really one of my first experiences working with technology. And back then I was more into hard technology, like the hardware, the circuit boards, the chips. And that one really excited me. With Motorola, I also got exposure into software as well, and realized that there was real power when you combine software with the hardware itself. And it wasn't just one or the other, but the combination of the two that could really make some great products. And that was really the start of my journey out of university. So not dissimilar to most graduates, they get a job. But it was at Motorola that I actually realized that I didn't want to work for somebody all the time. And I think it had to do with the fact that I had a leader that was probably not an ideal leader. It was very much driven on focus on the work itself, the tasks versus the person and the individual. And it's one of those jobs where you wake up and every morning you're like, oh, I don't want to go to work. And so I had one of those, and just out of the blue, the way it played out was I was having dinner with a colleague of mine at his father's place, and he was a cattle rancher. And so I was there listening to the challenges that they were having raising cattle. And some of the challenges they had with actually selling cattle, which is done through an auction house. And when he was explaining it to me, I realized that we could solve his challenges through technology, which is really strange to think about it. It's cattle and technology. They don't go hand in hand. And this is back in the early 90s. So they definitely didn't go hand in hand back in the early 90s. Now we have a better sense of how technology gets into those other areas. But that was when I realized that I could help him. He had a problem, and we could use technology to solve that problem together. And that was my first foray into building my own company at the time. Wow. So that was the start of my entrepreneurial journey at that point.
That's been an interesting start now. Thanks for sharing that with us. Now let's talk about your career progression, like from your, startup journey to how you progressed to your current role.
Sure, absolutely. So after I'd started that company with the cattle, and it was called Can Cow, I always put the Canadian on the front of it and then put cow there, and just always been a Canadian at heart. And so you'll see a lot of themes of having Canadian colors or Canadian elements to most of my companies. Once I had completed that company, I started another company. And I would say that I progressed through a number of startups that some of them did well, some of them did not so well. That is just the journey of any entrepreneur. You have some wins and you have some losses, and hopefully you learn from your losses and you have more wins than losses in the end. And at some point, it was about a couple years ago where I had, completed my tour de France or tour de journey, I think, through all of the various startups. And I was starting to think of, what do I want to do next? And I hadn't really been a part of a large organization that was going through digital transformation and that was setting up a new way of almost pivoting their industry. In some ways disrupting their industry and disrupting the work they did. So it was almost self-disruption. And I thought that would be interesting for me to get into, is a legacy industry that is on the edge of transformation. And I thought that would be fantastic. And so I joined Pollard Banknote as their CTO almost about a year and 6 months ago, or a year and 7 months ago, with the sole focus on helping the company transform itself and really transform the lottery industry. Pollard Banknote builds technology, predominantly software technology, also hardware technology for the lottery industry. One of the largest players in the world and providing various solutions for lottery. And they were looking at pioneering a new iLottery solution, a new platform that would transform how lotteries ran their operations. And I thought this was an exciting journey for me. It wasn't a startup journey. It was taking a company through that transformation and moving from more of a legacy industry into a digital company themselves. And now at Pollard, we never would have called ourselves, back 5 years ago, a technology company. But now we consider ourselves a technology company. And to me, that's been an exciting journey. And although we're not done the journey, we're still in our early days. It's very exciting where it's been so far.
That's wonderful to know. How about like your usual, work day looks like? What are your day-to-day roles and responsibilities as a CTO?
Yeah, no, that's great. Day to day, it really changes. And that's one thing I really love about working at Pollard Banknote. We're building an iLottery platform. I oversee all of the engineering and the technology aspects associated with building that platform. And to me, most of my day to day is spent making sure my teams have what they need to be successful. I very much focus on the people leadership aspect of it. Although I'm very technical, even today I can write code and I write code and I spend a lot of time with AI and ML. I don't do that in my day-to-day work. That is more of my side hobby to keep myself and my skills sharp. But I spend a lot of time with my team, making sure they've got what they need to be successful. And that starts with each individual, building deep connections with them. So I have a number of one-on-ones, what I call coffee chats with my team, making sure they've got what they need. And generally I end those conversations with, how can I support you? So my job is to enable them and allow them to be as successful as they can. After all, I'm not able to move the company forward by myself. It's the team that does it. And so I focus more on making sure that team is operating very effectively and efficiently.
Wonderful. Now let's talk about your career journey and career progression. How do you think as a leader you have evolved, throughout your career journey?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. As I mentioned earlier, my job with Motorola was not the most exciting job. I had a leader that I didn't really look up to. So I would say that early in my career, I learned what bad leadership looks like. And I would say more importantly, I learned what bad leadership feels like, because it's a feeling that we're left with. And I can still tell the stories today because of how it made me feel.
I still remember that.
That's right. I still remember it. It had an impact on me. And I realized that I didn't want to be a bad leader, but I also didn't know what a good leader looked like. I didn't, in fact, back then know what the definition of leadership really even meant, but I knew what I didn't want, the behaviors, the actions that I did not want myself to embody. And so through my journey as I was an entrepreneur, I tried lots of things. I think my first startup, I ran very much like a dictator, right? It was my way or the highway. Everything had to be my way. And there is some success you can get with that. Limited success though, right? And I experienced that limited success. There were people that flourish in that type of environment and some people that don't flourish in those types of environments. And over time, I kept tuning my own leadership skills and so forth. I did a short stint at a company here local in Calgary, which grew out to become one of the largest companies in the digital media space. It became Getty Images. So I was part of the company called iWire here in Calgary. And at iWire, I had an exposure to a great leader. The CEO was absolutely amazing. And I started watching his behaviors and I started modeling what he was doing. And I realized that was the type of person I wanted to become. That was the type of leader I wanted to become. And throughout my journey as a leader, I continued to reflect back at how I saw him model things. And I would quite often say to myself, what would Brad do in this situation? Because that was Brad. And then I had an opportunity to meet, further down my journey, I had an opportunity to meet another really, really inspiring individual, Suzanne. And she passed away, unfortunately, from brain cancer. However, she was also a great leader, very inspiring leader. And so I would look at what she was accomplishing with her companies and with her teams and how they would go to battle for her. And they would go to battle for her mission. And there was things I took from that and I continue to mold myself as a leader. I started realizing that leadership was really about getting people aligned on a common goal and a vision and getting them excited by it. I remember this old adage that still sticks with me. If you want to sail the seas, do not hire a bunch of people and tell them to build you a boat. Tell them stories about sailing on the sea. Get them excited about sailing on the seas, and they'll build you a boat. And so I use that type of model in my everyday, is focusing more on the journey and the inspiration of that journey and less about the work. And the work just gets done. And so I picked that up through my exposure to various leaders throughout my journey. And lately, I've obviously been diving heavily into a lot of books and material that we have around leadership that didn't exist back in the 90s or even in the 2000s. I think that, as a society, we've learned so much about people and what people like in the workplace and how people operate the best, right? For example, I couldn't imagine even 10, 15 years ago talking about empathy. And now we're talking about leaders having empathy. We're talking about people having empathy for one another. That was not discussed openly, 10, 15 years ago. So I'm now focusing more on some of the more modern practices of leadership that we've learned over the years.
Yeah, and I was about to ask you about empathy. What role empathy plays in your leadership style?
Yeah, it's a core part of my leadership. I always start off my conversations with my team members, checking in on how they're doing, and it's not just a check-in, checkbox, but I'm genuinely interested in their well-being. So I always start my conversations trying to understand how are they doing, and then start to understand what are the challenges that they have. And for me, it's about really understanding how the challenge is affecting them. I try not to put myself in their shoes. I think that's a different way of approaching it. I try to understand, I get to know the individual, and I start to understand how a certain situation will impact that individual based on what I know about them. And so it is core to who I am as a leader. And I would say that that's the one skill that I continue to want to hone in on and get better at. Empathy as well as communication are the two skills that I think are critical for any successful leader.
That's wonderful perspective again. So talking about the teams right now, when you look for building up a team, what core qualities you look for in your team members other than the technical skill sets?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think that building a team is one of the hardest things to do. When you talk about building different types of teams, most people say, I want to build a high performing team. And it's kind of first aligning on what high performance means to you. For me, the thing is that building a team is very strategic, and you have to be very, very thoughtful in the types of people you bring on and the types of gaps you've got and filling those gaps. And so I typically, if I'm building a team from scratch, I'll start with a strong leader. So within, for example, a software development team, I might want to hire on a senior engineer, a very strong senior engineer who can help build the rest of the team. And a lot of what I do with the team and building the team is getting them to work well together. I have believed that, and I've seen firsthand, if you have a great idea and you have a team that can't execute, that great idea will fail. If you have a poor idea and you have a great team, they'll probably turn that poor idea into a great idea. Right? And so it all comes with the team. If you can get them working well together, you can throw any piece of work at them and they'll be able to accomplish it. So I focus on how well they work together. Do they trust each other? The core part of any high performance team is trust. And once you have trust, you can start to work at the next level of it, which I call more of a rhythm. And do they work with a rhythm? If you think about sculls, where it's an 8-person rowing team, they're not rowing individually at their own speed. Some might be able to row faster than others. What they have to do is find that right cadence where they all row together, that rhythm, that they're all working together, focus on the same goal, and then the boat goes straight. And when they all are rowing at the same time and the boat is going perfectly straight, the boat actually lifts up off the water. And it actually runs across the top of the water, and they get greater speed and as a result, less friction as well. So if the team is all working together, you get greater velocity with less friction. And that's what ultimately leads to a high performance team.
Love the way you explained. Thanks for sharing all that insight. Let's talk a bit about digital transformation.
Yes.
What, according to you, or how different the companies are doing digital transformation now versus, say, 5 years ago?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think 5 years ago, we focused more on the technology of digital transformation. We looked at digital transformation and said, I need to move to the cloud. I need to enable all of my folks to work remotely. I need to give them the tools that they need to be able to get their job. We focused more on the technology. And I think what we've realized is a lot of digital transformations failed because of culture. And instead of focusing on the technology, we should have been focusing on the people. Did we give the people the right training? Did we introduce the changes in the right way to the culture? did they know where we were going to go? What was the end state that we were trying to achieve? So the culture has been one thing that didn't get the respect it needed when we do digital transformation, because after all, we called it digital and people are analog. So we focus on the digital part of the work rather than the actual cultural part of it. And so now we're seeing that there's a big shift towards mindset, making sure that the culture is being brought along with the digital transformation. So in some cases, it starts with just training. In other cases, it's much more profound in terms of the culture that you're changing, where you might have to bring cultural agents in. You know, you have to bring in people that actually understand where you're going, the technology itself, and can be those change agents that help the rest of the culture move along. But for me, digital transformation honestly is less about technology. That's the easy part. And it's more now about the mindset of the culture and the people that you've got.
It's more people-centric these days.
That's right, yeah. And we didn't know this 5 years ago. And I think it was through a lot of failed transformations that we broadly started to focus more on people.
So when you interact with your customers and being a tech guy, so how do you align the business solutions, or how do you explain it to them? And what are the typical challenges do you normally see?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that as technologists, we typically start to solution things before we really understand it. Someone presents a problem, and rather than us actually understanding the problem, we lean in and start to go, oh, I think you could use this and you can do that. And we very quickly get in with a solution. And that is kind of our nature, because most of us are engineers. And so we're problem solvers. And so we get in there trying to solve the problem without really understanding the problem. And what I like to do is take a step back. What I like to do is say, okay, I've got a customer here and they've got a problem. Let me really understand this problem. Let me fall in love with this problem. So tell me as much as you can about this problem. Why is this problem a problem? Maybe it's not a problem. Rather than focusing on the solution, getting to know the problem, getting to know the impact the problem has on the customer, the industry, the broader industry as well, helps make sure that we then do solution it, we come up with the right solution. But I think a lot of times technologists have a tendency to jump too quickly to a solution without understanding the problem. And I've always stated that if you fall in love with the problem, you're going to make it your own. And when it becomes your own, you're going to solve it in the right way.
So now let's talk about the current trends in tech. What are the current trends that you see, or what are the current trends that excites you most in the industry?
Yeah, I would say that if I didn't mention AI, people would probably get a little upset at me right now. I would say one of the biggest trends obviously is AI, and everyone is talking about AI. And I'm as excited about AI as everyone else is. In fact, I'm in the camp of very bullish. I believe AI is going to be very profound, probably the most profound technology of our lifetime. And so I'm all in on AI. And I know there's lots of battles around whether we are going to be building AI in an ethical way, whether AI is going to, replace jobs and eventually even hurt humanity. And I believe that we can do things the right way. We have built technology in the past that, yes, we initially used it to hurt each other, nuclear bombs as an example, but we've also learned to use that technology for good. And we had to go through that journey. And I think with AI, we are going to go through that journey. And in some ways, we are going through that journey with AI right now, with the deep fakes that we've got, for example, and the scams that are happening with AI. So we will actually traverse through that. And I think we'll come out on the other side in a much better situation where we'll know how to effectively use that technology for good of humanity. And I think that it's going to be a good of humanity. So I would say AI broadly, I'm very excited about. I think within AI, the area that I'm most excited about is agentic AI. So autonomous agents being able to do work for you, I think is very exciting. And this to me is like a year, 2 years out, where we're going to have, our own personal agents that are able to do things for us, accomplish a lot of these digital tasks that we would normally do. I'm really looking forward to the robot that can wash dishes and clean our house.
I was about to ask about humanoids. My next question was that. What are your thoughts on humanoids?
Well, the day that they're available commercially or even for residential use, sign me up. I'm ready to buy one now. And I think my wife would agree that she would want one as well, just to help with the cooking and cleaning around the house.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I think robots are going to be really dramatic for us as well. Certainly, we've already seen their exposure in factories, but I think when you start to think about being able to take a robot that's maybe $30,000 and then you lease it like you lease a car, and you're making a couple $100 a month payment for this thing to have this robot at your house and disposal, doing what you need it to do. I think that is a game changer in my mind, and it frees us from having to do those things. We have a Roomba that vacuums our floors. That's just an example of a really low-end robot. But now imagine if this Roomba can actually, cook or clean and other things that it can't do today. It removes a lot of those tasks from us, and we can focus on other things. So agentic AI to me is really powerful. I'm really excited by that. I'm also really excited by robotics and what that's going to bring to humanity. I think ultimately combining those two pieces is going to create a world of abundance for us. Through AI, we can solve really complex problems. We can figure out how to grow crops much better without pesticides and other types of things. We can come up with new proteins and new cures for diseases that we haven't thought of in the past. And I think with robotics, we're going to free ourselves from a lot of this boring chores, we'll say, and we can focus more time on other things. As long as those other things add value, you're not just going to sit there doom scrolling on your phone while your robot is doing your house cleaning, but you can maybe take that time to go and spend with your kids, go on a hike, go on a travel somewhere, right? I think that's going to be fantastic for humanity.
Definitely. The future looks promising.
Absolutely. Yes.
So now we talked about your career journey. We talked a lot about technology. Now, let's talk about your early days. Let's talk about, about your roots, your hometown, and how was your upbringing?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was born in Punjab in India. So I'm of Indian heritage. And when I was 4 years old, my parents decided to move to Canada. Obviously back then, I would say the typical story of immigrants is they wanted a better life for their kids. And my parents had a good life in India, but they wanted something better for the kids. And so my dad made the trek to Canada. In fact, he didn't come to Canada directly. He actually came in through originally New York, where he was denied entry, and then into Edmonton. And then he came to Edmonton by himself. He first came just to, set some type of set it up so that we could arrive successfully there. He went to Edmonton. He came in as a Sikh with a turban and made it very difficult for him to find a job. He then slowly made his way down to southern Alberta to a community area called Coleman, and he started working in the mines. And back then, that was pretty much the only jobs that Indians could get, was very hard manual labor, even though my dad was an electrical engineer. No one was going to hire him as an electrical engineer at the time. And so he worked in the mines, literally in the coal mines. If you think about working hard days, you're in these mines with coal, with really bad air quality, hard manual labor. And he did that for as long as he could to make some money. And when he made some money, he was able to move to Calgary and get a place to stay. And then he was able to call his family over. So then my mom made the trek across the ocean by herself, didn't speak any English whatsoever, and had 3 young kids with her. So quite the journey for her to arrive here in Calgary and set up shop here. So I grew up in Calgary. I went to local universities here, went to local high schools here. And it was, I would say, a typical journey. I dealt with a lot of racism growing up. As you can imagine, my parents wanted the best for us. So they put us in a really good school. Well, we were the only people that were different in the school. It was my brother and I. And so we experienced a lot of racism. We experienced racism into junior high school and right into high school and even university. We experienced a lot of racism. Back then, there was very little acceptance for people that were different. Now, we're much more open. People's minds have expanded and we understand that differences should be embraced rather than pushed away. So times have certainly changed, but back then it was a real challenge for us.
And that's an inspiring, story of your dad as well. And you are now making mark in the industry. So that's really commendable.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think that, our parents did what they could to give us a better life and they succeeded. And so, my mother was able to retire early, because as we got to university and graduated, we were all, on great trajectories. I have two siblings. We were on really good trajectories. We had successful careers at that point. And so parents are like, well, we don't have to work anymore. We're like, you don't, you should enjoy now. And so they're able to take some time off and retire fairly early, in their life. And so that's really nice to kind of see that. And now they have the opportunity to do traveling if they want to, spend the time with their grandchildren, and they can just really kind of sit back and enjoy life now. So it's their time to enjoy.
Definitely. That's wonderful to know.
Yeah.
So now let's talk a bit about your education, from where you did your education and how were those days?
Yeah, the education, I would say that when I first went to university, which was local University of Calgary, I wanted to be a dentist.
Really?
Yeah, I did. I was like, I don't know what it was about dentist. It wasn't wanting to look into people's mouths or anything, but there's something about dentistry I thought that was really fun and unique. So I went in there. First year, I'm ready to go into dentistry. And I ended up taking one of my non-core courses was a computer science course. And I fell in love with it. I'm like, this is really neat. You can instruct a computer to do things through these things that we called code. And I was like, this is very interesting. We had just finished the punch card era. So I was post the punch card era. So we were actually typing code into the computers. But it was really exciting for me that we could do all of this with computers. And so, I got more and more excited, and I said, okay, the next semester, I'm going to take another computer science course. Suddenly after my first year, I'm like, I don't want to be a dentist. I want to get more into computer science. And I went down the computer science route. There was computer engineering, there was computer science at the time. And then there were some vocational schools that had started offering programming. But I went into computer science, which was all about algorithms and problem solving. But it wasn't engineering problem solving. It was creative problem solving, which was at the science part of it, right? It was much more exploratory. And to me, that was exciting. Because I've always been an explorer myself. And so that's where it started. The love for it really started in early university. It was interesting. If you back up a little bit, when I was a young teenager, this computer came out called the Commodore VIC-20. So Commodore was one of the computer companies at the time, really big, and they had just built this PC computer. It was the first PC computer that was built. There was an Apple PC computer that had been built, and then the Commodore VIC-20. And my dad wanted us to get into technology, so he bought it for us. We didn't use it for much more than playing games with. But we learned a little bit about computers then. And so I wasn't really into it until university, after taking those computer science courses that taught me more about the science behind this than just playing games. And that's what excited me.
That's an interesting journey from dentistry to debugging and coding.
Yeah, there's nothing related, but I would say it's very similar to my journey from technology to cattle.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now let's talk a bit about your family. Who all are the key anchors in your family?
Yeah. Well, I would say that obviously my parents, I mentioned them, and I mentioned I've got a brother and a sister as well. My sister is older. My brother is younger. So I'm a middle child, which has its challenges. And I think that middle childs are the best, and so it's a challenge being a middle child for sure, growing up. But now I would say that I've learned a lot being the middle child, seeing my sister and how she responds and almost carving a path for us. And then also having to help my brother and mentor him and coach him along the way. So I think the middle child is quite the interesting role for us. And then, after that, I would say that now I'd say my big anchor is my wife, Jessica. So I met her. Wow, she's going to get mad if I get the number wrong. But I met her 33 years ago. And it's just been a fantastic journey. I'm a big Superman fan. And so I always think of her as the yellow sun for me, which is where Superman draws all his energy from, is the yellow sun. So I call her my yellow sun. And so she is my main anchor. She's the one who keeps me grounded and keeps me focused and keeps me passionate about life. So she's been amazing, a partner for me in my journey here. And then I've got 3 amazing kids. My eldest daughter, Marissa, she is 25 years old, and she's out on her own and is making her own mark in society. She is a social worker and quite enjoys that. So she helps, she works for the child services group within Alberta Healthcare. And so she is an advocate for children that can't speak for themselves in terms of, from abusive families and other types of I would say, battered homes. So I really do respect that she wants to help people. Social work isn't a career you fall into. It's a conscious decision you make, and you have to be passionate about it. And so she is. So I like that. My middle child, Tia, she's completing her last year of university. So I'm really excited for her. She's in marketing, and she really has a knack for it. She's a very gifted individual. And I think sometimes those gifted individuals struggle in society because it's too easy for them. And so you need to throw some challenges at them. So for her, she's been it's been quite interesting watching her grow up. It's quite different than my other child, Marissa, was. And every kid grows up differently, and it's always neat to see how they grow up. And then there's my youngest son, Nathan. So he's going to high school, starting high school, grade 10 next year. So he's very excited about that, being in high school. He just got his driver's learner's license. And so he can start to learn to drive now. And he's pretty excited about that as well.
Wow.
But for him, summer is it. He loves to play basketball and sports, and he likes to spend his time outside. So I enjoy also spending time with him as well. So the three of them are very different in who they are. Their personalities are so different, but they keep me grounded and they keep me humble. And I learned so much from my kids. I think we spend our time thinking we're teaching our kids things, but in many ways, they're teaching us things throughout our journey as well.
So Nav, thank you so much for sharing all the wonderful insights with us. Now, let's talk about a piece of advice for the young professionals, or I would say any advice which you would like to give to the aspiring tech leaders.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that I probably got two pieces of advice, or maybe two different types of pieces of advice. I think the first one would be in regards to something I mentioned earlier. I think it's important for tech entrepreneurs or tech founders to fall in love with the problem. I think quite often we think that it's about the technology, and it's not about the technology. It's about how the customer is going to use the technology to solve their problem. So we quite often go, I've got some great tech and I'm trying to figure out how to use it. That is like a hammer looking around for a nail. And you may not need a hammer. And so it's like focus on the problem and really, fall in love with the problem, and you'll eventually come up with a good solution, and you can use technology to solve that problem. The second piece of advice is, and a lot of tech entrepreneurs probably don't get this until later on, because it's very hard for you to realize this, but you're going through an amazing journey. All entrepreneurs will go through an amazing journey. And it's so important that they stop and smell the roses as they go through this journey. I know that myself as an entrepreneur, I was in that grind and hustle, working long hours, constantly working, laptop connected to my lap all the time, phone connected to my hand all the time. And I missed so much of the journey that I reflect back at now. And I said, I should have paused here. I should have paused there, just to reflect back. And I think that would have helped steer me, and probably even give me more wind in my sails, to move forward. And so my advice is, embrace the journey, but also take time to smell the roses along the journey.
That's wonderful. And those are like some valuable takeaways. Thank you for sharing that now with us. Now we are nearing end of our wonderful discussion, and at the end we have a rapid fire round for you.
Okay.
So if you're ready, we can begin with some, firing some quick questions onto you.
Sure.
And I would be expecting quick answers on those questions.
Okay, let's do this. It's exciting.
Okay, so let's start. Your first question: who inspires you the most?
I would say my parents, and the hustle that they had to do when they were starting their journey here in Canada.
Wonderful. Texting or talking?
Talking.
Nice. Hidden talent no one knows about?
Oh, hidden talent that nobody knows about. I don't know if I want anybody to know about it, though. Yeah, I would say that I am a very, very funny individual. And I will break out funny things, funny dances, funny anything at the most inopportune time. And my kids and family are always covering their face and eyes when I do that.
And now everyone knows it.
Now everyone knows.
Okay. Next question: respect or trust? What's harder to earn?
Harder to earn, I would say, is trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fall fast or plan meticulously?
I think it's a balance of both, to be honest with you. I tend to err more on the side of fail fast, or even more importantly, fail forward.
Okay, that's a nice answer. Netflix or a good book?
A good book.
Okay. One lesson you live by?
Treat everyone as you'd like them to treat you. And so I think that is a bit of a cliche one, but it's absolutely how I live my life.
That's a great answer. And coming to the last question, if you had a superpower, what would it be?
I think my superpower would be time travel, the ability to go back in time. And I wouldn't go back in time to affect change. I would probably go forward in time to understand where we're going, to see if I can influence it in any way whatsoever.
That's interesting. Yeah. And with this, we wrap up our wonderful discussion now. It's been really a pleasure to have you with us today. And thank you for sharing such wonderful insights with us.
Thanks, Sheetal. It's my pleasure. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.